want to get to the IRS snooping on you. The White House is looking to force banks to report personal bank transactions of at least $600 to help pay for the massive spending package. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen promoting the idea, saying that it would reveal opaque income streams that disproportionately accrue to the top. Joining me right now is the former president of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank. He is the former president and CEO, and the CEO and president of Mercatus Center, distinguished senior fellow, Thomas Hoenig. Thomas, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to join you.
So this is an extraordinary debacle where you've got the president and the Treasury Secretary pushing this idea that banks should report transactions of $600. Give us your sense and your reaction to this.
Well, I think it's a dangerous idea for several reasons. But number one, it is an incredible invasion of privacy. It allows basically, it requires banks to forward information, account transactions over the course of a year that's as little as $600. They talked about raising it to $10,000, which is of little consequence. It's still be incredibly intrusive. And it's a massive search without a search warrant. I hate to say that. And I think it will cause individuals, usually the very wealthy who may be avoiding or in some instances perhaps evading taxes, they will find they have lawyers, they have accountants that will find other ways to avoid taxes. It will be the middle class, upper middle class, will be caught in this, and there'll be, I think, in the collection of the data, there'll be false positives. So that means individuals will have will be approached by the government about what they're doing. They'll have to spend additional funds to try and defend themselves. It's really a bad idea, number one. Number two, it's extremely expensive. It will cause the banks to have to collect this data and present it in a format that can be used by the IRS. That will cost billions. And then they will ask the banks to massage that data over time, change systems so they can better identify or find exceptions from the norm. That will cost hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars as well. And thirdly, I think it really will cause the public to have even less trust in our government institutions, because very simply, if you're intruding into everything, you want to avoid that. You become very cynical about the rule of law, and I think it undermines confidence of the American people in its institutions. And so I think it's a bad idea on all fronts.
Yeah, most people do, Thomas, think it's a bad idea and unconstitutional. But you make a number of really important points, and that is that there are unintended consequences as a result of this, like there are on so many other issues. One of those unintended consequences is that rich people will move the money, and they have the resources to do so. So tell me about the Federal Reserve considering issuing a U.S. digital currency. Will this also move people moving toward digital? It comes as central banks around the world are experimenting with new digital forms of money. Is this going to be a catalyst in that regard?
This would be, I don't know that it would be more of a catalyst in that regard. I think central bank digital currencies right now, especially for the U.S. and maybe Europe, are being looked at as more of a defensive move. Things are going very digital, and there is this concern that they may be unable to keep up with that, I guess is the only way to say it. And it's a defensive move. And number one. Number two, it's also a reaction to China, who is going forward with a digital currency. And they are concerned about that in some ways, I think. And finally, I think it's another, at least the Federal Reserve is looking at it. They're going to put out requests for comment on it, because it also has the effect of, I think, restructuring the banking system of the United States, because potentially you will have digital cash. Well, and you'll have it in your wallet on your iPhone or your whatever phone, and you will process it that way. But also you can have accounts, depending on how they were designed, that would be at the Federal Reserve System level. And you don't need that to move funds more quickly. You have real-time payments that will take care of that. So this is going to move accounts from banks to the central bank, and I think it will be an effect would be to disintermediate the banking industry, and that will affect regional smaller banks more than the money center banks. But nevertheless, it will restructure the system further, and I think it's harmful. And finally, if the Federal Reserve is taking deposits from everyone, that will take care of the forwarding stuff to the Treasury because it will already be in the government's hands.
It's pretty extraordinary, actually, that we're actually debating something like this, particularly as low as $600. And as you say, even the $10,000 number captures everybody anyway. If you're working for a company and that 10,000 number is in place, you're still capturing everybody's, most people's transactions. So let me ask you about where people should be focused on this issue, because we've talked a lot about this and the cost that you bring up to the banking sector. I'm wondering if this is also giving the IRS an opportunity to become a weapon. It also gives the IRS potential to get politicized, having all of that access to people's accounts.
Well, it almost certainly will be abused, as we've learned in other examples of going in and grabbing information legally or illegally out of the IRS. So, it will be used as a political weapon against parties that are not in agreement with you. Look at their data, see what you can find, sort of thing. And yes, there'll be legal protections, but those are often breached, and that's unfortunate. I think it's just a bad idea to put that much access into our personal lives at will by the Treasury and the IRS. It's very, I think, destabilizing.
Thomas, the other thing is that the money raised, they are betting that they can raise $400 billion by this surveillance move, that they think they're going to catch cheats. But to identify $600 transactions, you're pretty much surveilling and targeting lots of people, including low-income earners, and they're doing this to actually pay for the SALT deduction. That's what's so incredibly hypocritical, because they're telling us that they want to help the low income, and yet they're surveilling all of us in our bank accounts to raise $400 billion to be able to put the SALT deduction back in the spending plan for the New Yorkers and New Jerseyans who are complaining that they lost their SALT deduction. So surveil the poor and the rest of us, the moderate, everybody, and do so to raise money for the rich.
Well, first of all, I don't know where this $400 billion came from. I don't know the details of how they got it. I think
that's a good point.
The raise of $400 billion may be offset by the cost, both to the banking industry and to the IRS or to the taxpayer, in terms of increased costs to collect this $400 billion. So I think it's probably a exaggerated figure, number one. Number two, to pretend that this is going to raise enough money to violate the individual's rights to privacy in a means to catch, I think, of the total population, a relatively small number of individuals. And the wealthiest of those will be the ones who are able to avoid it, continue to avoid it. I think is very, it's hypocritical to important, but also I think mostly it's just dangerous.
It is dangerous, and that's what we're hearing from a number of Republicans who are fighting against it. But, of course, you know that what is in the bill that they're debating right now is $80 billion being earmarked toward the IRS so that the IRS can hire 80,000 new tax auditors. So whether or not this component, the surveillance, makes it into the bill, you have to believe that it's in it. If you've got 80,000 additional tax auditors looking for money wherever they can to raise money to pay for the climate deal.
Well, that's correct. You have a lot of auditors who will have to have something to do, so we can all expect what I'll call more intrusive questions on your tax returns would be the outcome of this. Right. And let's agree. I mean, people who owe taxes should pay their taxes, but I think this is a rather draconian, both of collecting data and forwarding it to the Treasury and hiring this many additional auditors to collect what I think will be far less than $400 billion over time.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're pointing out all of those important issues around this proposal. Thomas, what do you make of what we're talking about now, the conversation around an additional $3.5 trillion spending plan? The infrastructure plan's obviously taking a back seat now because the administration wants to get both plans through, but you've got inflation out there, partly a result of all of this money being thrown at the economy. You've got an economy that is likely having seen the peak growth. What do you think about when you see all of this policy being debated as it impacts the economy?
Well, I think you're right about the $3.5 trillion. It will be a huge increase in demand, government demand, going into the economy, which will put continued upward pressure on prices. I think also it will depend on how many taxes are in that bill, because that will be the offsetting slowdown of the economy as you move funds from the private sector to the public sector. And I think those are very serious questions that would, I think, bring into some concern future growth in the economy, and we need to be aware of that. Finally, I think if you're going to fund $3.5 trillion, and I doubt seriously if taxes are going to cover that, even close, you'll have to issue a whole new level of fiscal debt. It's gone from 10 trillion 15 years ago to 30 trillion. It will go much higher than that in the future. And I think what you're going to find is enormous pressure on the central bank to buy that debt over time, to put it on its account, which also has further implications for the future and inflation. So it's I think they better think it through carefully as they proceed, both Democrats and Republicans, because the effects are long-term and they are going to be significant.
Thomas, real quick before you go, should we be eliminating the debt ceiling altogether?
Absolutely not. I think these debates are important. It brings it to the attention of the American people that just how much debt we're taking on